I want to backtrack to the conversation between Theo Von and Bernie Sanders for a moment and have a discussion about the conversation surrounding wealth inequality and communism and this term corporate communism that Theo Von ends up using in the discussion here. So let me play this clip and then go on and look at a couple of charts with you guys.
Oligarchy. An oligarchy is a society where small numbers of very wealthy people control the economic and political life of the country. I think we are moving rapidly in that direction.
To me, it feels like an almost privatized communism in a way.
Right. That's a very good point.
So Theo Von uses the term privatized communism, corporate communism, this idea that you allow the entire society to be distributed to or run or controlled by just the corporate class, and everyone else is sort of squeezed out of the picture and given very little resources, power, and money. And unfortunately, that's the reality that we are sort of living in these days, really living in right now. And it seems to only be getting worse. And it's very frustrating because a lot of the frustration, a lot of the issues that we have nowadays are because there has been a redistribution of wealth over the past 40 to 50 years, where the redistribution has not been from the wealthy to the rest of the classes like you'd seen in communist societies or attempted socialist or communist societies like in the USSR. We've seen the exact opposite situation happen here, where the middle class has been hollowed out, the middle and lower classes, and the middle class's wealth has been redistributed up to the top 1%, top 10%, and really more than anything, the top 1/10 of 1%, as Bernie Sanders says. But really, you can look at any chart, and I know sometimes charts can be misleading, but it's almost like no matter how you spin it, no matter how you ask the question, the reality is that the wealth at the top percentages of scratch that. A lot of the wealth has been concentrated up to the top percentiles in the United States. And really, we haven't seen an increase in wealth. And in fact, we've seen really a decrease in some cases in wealth in the bottom 90%. So for example, shares of wealth in the United States by wealth percentile between 1989 and 2016. And I assure you, it's just gotten worse since the pandemic, exacerbated by the Great Recession, exacerbated again by the pandemic. Where in 1989, you had the top 1% sort of lagging or, trailing the bottom 90%, which would make sense. 90% of people should have more wealth than 1% of people in a society that makes sense. But since then, the top 1% has sucked up and gathered only more and more and more wealth, whereas the bottom 90% has found it more and more difficult to get their hands on wealth in this system. And the politicians, mostly on the right, will pull their hair out and yell and scream and cry whenever people talk about, well, we need to raise taxes on corporations, we need some modest redistribution of wealth, we need to get this under control because people are literally dying, people cannot afford their food, their groceries, we have an inflation crisis, and that's exacerbating the problem. People are really feeling squeezed, especially by inflation, because these problems are already underlying. You have had this happening over the past 40 years. And now when you get into a situation where things get a little bit tight, when you have a crisis and things get strained, you feel it all the more strongly. So, of course, all these arguments get turned into, no, it's the immigrants' fault, or no, it's, the socialists and the communists' fault, or no, it's, it turns into all these debates that are really just meant to throw you off trail, where the real issue is just the robber barons and the monopolists and the CEOs who are now making, 200 times the average salary of their employees are just running out the back door with all the wealth and living these lavish, ridiculous lifestyles, accumulating wealth that they're never going to be able to spend in a million lifetimes, and just laughing at the rest of everyone else fighting over scraps. And so it's really a sick system that is meant to pit people against each other. where again, I can pull up any sort of chart, and I challenge you to find a chart that shows something otherwise. But this is the reality of the situation. It's a sick system. People are fed up with it. And that's why every election cycle now, people are voting for the perceived change candidate. And in my opinion, it's the only reason that people give Donald Trump a chance, because they perceive him in that way, even though he's an absolute buffoon and he is part of the problem, and he is the problem in many ways in the first place. So Bernie Sanders talked a lot about this, has talked a lot about this. I'd like to see another candidate sort of pick up the mantle and continue that message and really try to bring change to it. Um, so we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.